All right, guys, so in this video here today, I want to talk about the positive things of COVID-19 and the good things that we can take away from it, because a month ago I produced the dangers of quarantine, which was very one-sided. We were looking at one side of the equation, and this week I want to look at the complete opposite side of it, okay? And let's talk about that. So what are the positives of it, right? There's a lot of terrible things associated with it, but what are the small little things that we can take away from this to be the best version of ourselves, to better ourselves, and to, I would say, maybe understand ourselves on a more deeper level, okay? And I'll start with my own experience through this, right? So, I spent a lot of time alone during this COVID-19 lockdown and the quarantine. So a lot of my time has been spent by myself. And that causes a lot of, self-reflection and thinking about things. And it's like, I've always wanted to live somewhere like nice and warm, where I can just be, I can envision myself like just maybe with a beach nearby, just, being able to go outside all the time, like not during just summer. Like here in Toronto, like it's hard to live a normal life during winter because it's just so cold. It's so cold outside that you don't want to go outside. Your friends don't want to go outside. Nobody wants to really go outside. So you're stuck kind of indoors for the majority of it. And so what I'm getting at here is that during this lockdown, it made me kind of think about a lot of things. I was on a video call with my cousin, a few weeks back, and I remember talking to him about, my future plans, because I don't really know where I want to live long term in my life still as of yet. Being 33 years old, I'd figure I would kind of know where I exactly wanted to live, but I'm not sure yet. And I was talking to him, and the one thing I was sure of, at least, was that I definitely didn't want to live in New York. I don't like New York. I don't like the cold winters. I don't like the dirty streets. There's a lot of things about New York that I simply just don't like. But it got me thinking, like, there is a small chance that I might actually end up living in New York long term. I think it's still very small, but let's say it was like a 0% chance before this COVID situation, and now it's like a 3% chance. And the reason I bring that up is because what COVID has kind of taught me, and this whole situation has kind of taught me, is that the relationships in your life are so much more valuable than we give them credit for, to be honest. And I can see that a lot clearer now to, be in a city or a state where you have a lot of friends or cousins or people that you're close with is actually very, very, very important. And it took this COVID situation for me to fully realize that. Obviously this is something we know intuitively, our whole lives. We're just like, yeah, it's, relationships matter, this and that. But then there's some certain things that happen, and then now you see that there's so much more value, in these relationships than you originally maybe thought there was, or at least in my experience. Maybe you're not having the same experience. Maybe you're just like, Jack, I already know relationships are the number one thing by far. And when I say relationships, I don't necessarily mean relationships with a girl or a guy, a significant other, like a partner. I mean just relationship as far as, friends and cousins and, people that you socialize with or whatever that may be. And, as I get older, I'm starting to realize more and more of that slowly but surely in my life, that how, important those deep, relationships are in life. And I just wanted to share that with you guys. And that's a huge thing I'm taking out of this COVID-19 lockdown quarantine situation, is just, to how can I improve or better those relationships? And I do a terrible job at this in general. A lot of my friends from New York, I don't hear from them or they don't hear from me until I go visit, once a year or once every couple of years. And, during COVID, we've actually been keeping in touch more than we were, prior to COVID, because we're just kind of like, okay, like let's kind of stay in touch. Let's call each other. Let's talk once in a while, and that's been a great thing for me to reconnect with, some of my friends and cousins from back home, and kind of value those relationships more now, than I did before this whole lockdown kind of situation. And maybe you're having the same experience. Maybe you're finding that maybe, you're connecting better with people now, and maybe, or you're just seeing more value in it, and you're seeing that it's so much more important than maybe you thought in the past, and yeah, it just really got me thinking, because I was so sure that I would never move back to New York. Now there's a small chance that I would. I still would rather not. I would rather end up in California, maybe somewhere where it's a little bit warmer. But I'm not 100% sure, right? I just don't know for certain as of now. But it seems like life is just more simple, without all this, like the retail stores being open, and the bars and the restaurants. It's almost like we're back to, and there's no I can't take improv classes, you can't do this, you can't do that. There's a lot of things that you can't do now. And it's almost like we're kind of living a very simple life, like almost we're like in a third world country. When I was living in a third world country, this is what it felt like almost all the time. When I was living in Costa Rica, it was just so simple. People were just happy just talking to each other, like they didn't need any restaurants or bars or classes or this or that and all the extra things, the retail stores, the name brands, all this is closed and this and that. Like when you peel back all the layers, life becomes so simple. Like it becomes so simple. In a way, it becomes more beautiful. I'll still remember till this day when I was living in Costa Rica. And it was a little beach town called Tamarindo. And on my way there, I forget where we land at the airport, but it doesn't land in Tamarindo. There's no airport in Tamarindo. So the airport is like 45 minutes away from Tamarindo. It's a 45-minute drive. And it's something I'll remember for my whole life. Every time I went from the airport to Tamarindo, and then from Tamarindo to the airport, which was I think only 2 times. So I went back and forth twice. And I would just look out the window of the taxi, just look out the window this way, look out the window that way. And just to see how people are living, I was just like, wow, this is so different. You see it on TV all the time, but when you actually see it in person, it's kind of interesting. Like I saw people just like taking showers outside, like Mexican families living in Costa Rican families living in like a tent that's like the size of it's so small. It almost seems like a little storm can just knock over their whole house. But what else I saw was more interesting. I saw a lot of happy faces, which was kind of intriguing to me. And I remember the whole time I was living there was a saying, pura la vida, which means the pure life or something along those lines. And everyone was just so happy. Like it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. Because in New York, a lot of the people are unhappy in New York. You look around, the average person is kind of depressed in New York. And I was looking around, I was like, everyone's got this big smile on their face. They're making like $5 per day maximum. A lot of them are making a lot less than that. They're barely eating, but they're so thankful. They're so grateful. Like it's just so magical to be a part of that. And I don't know, it just hit me. Like I was just looking, and people were riding their bicycles. When I was in the taxi, I was looking at this girl. She was riding her bicycle and she was just happy. Like maybe she was going to her friend's house. Maybe she was, I don't know. I guess that's all she could have been doing. There's not really much else to do. So it's just when you strip away all those kind of things, and simplify your life. Let's say if you strip away the Netflix, you strip away the bars, the restaurants, the classes, the this, the that, the only thing that's left is relationships. How close you are with your family or your friends or your cousins or whatever it may be, that's at the core of it. And that's why they say that there's a lot of people in these third world countries that live such a simple life, they don't even know Netflix exists. And a lot of them are happier than the people of the first world countries like Canada or the US. And people in Canada or the US, for example, we're so spoiled in a sense. Like we have everything, And somehow, like, there's a lot of unhappiness, right? You know, there's a lot of unhappiness, which is kind of weird to think about, to be honest. You're like, why is everyone so unhappy when they have everything? You know, if you put like an iPhone in the hands of one of these, you know, kids I saw in Costa Rica, they would be like, what is going on here? Like, this would be incredible. Like, nothing I've ever seen before, you know? And for them, like, I don't know, their life was just so good. And like, I remember I had like one of the most blissful moments of my life when I was living in Tamarindo. I remember just walking down the street, just doing nothing. I was just walking down the street, the sun was out, the beach was next door, like right here. And I was thinking like, this is amazing. Like, nothing really matters. You know, nothing really matters. It was just like, it was just beauty. Like, I was just so in the moment, just walking down that sidewalk, just breathing and just having, you know, it sounds so crazy, like just breathing, but I was just breathing and having like a really euphoric kind of moment, just walking down the sidewalk. I wasn't doing anything. I don't remember where I was walking to. I feel like I was walking to a restaurant or something like that, but I was just walking, and I just remember just like looking around, like everyone's just like happy, you know, relaxed, just having a good time. Life is good. And yeah, I've never been able to like take that moment out of my head. I was like, wow, it was amazing. And I wasn't doing anything. There was nothing happening, right? And yeah, I think if we just, you know, slow down in life sometimes and just stop, and I guess there's that saying, stop and smell the roses, and really enjoy life. And by enjoy life, I mean just be present to the moment. You know, when you're walking outside, maybe just walk a little bit slower. Notice the things around you. Notice the tall buildings. Maybe you don't have tall buildings. Notice the people that are walking around you. Notice the little cafes or the bars or the restaurants. And just slow down and really enjoy everything. My grandfather used to be great at this. He would just put his hands behind his back. He used to put his hands behind his back like this and just walk around. Just walking around slowly, and you would see this like kind of like this relaxed, grateful look on his face, like it was the greatest thing he's ever done in his life. Just walking around, just slowly. And it just felt so right. So in conclusion, like, I want to wrap up by saying the main point that I'm trying to make in this video here is sometimes we have to really enjoy those small little things that we overlook in our lives and that we don't pay attention enough to and that we lose sight of, right? We lose sight of them all the time because there's so many different distractions in this world. There's so many things going on that we lose sight of, like, the beauty in those very simple things that you literally wouldn't even be aware of until I kind of just made you even more aware in this video. Like things that you just forget about or you take for granted all the time. So slow down when you're walking outside. Slow down your breathing. Just slow down. Just be in the moment. Look at everything around you. Just enjoy it. And cherish the relationships in your life. And just like every other video, I will say that, you know, when I'm talking to this camera, I'm also seeing my own reflection. I see myself right here, and I'm talking to myself as well. Because if I'm honest with myself, you know, cherishing my relationships has been something that I've done a very poor job of, you know, basically my whole life. If I'm being completely honest with myself, you know, basically my whole life, I do a pretty bad job at keeping in touch, you know, with people that I want to keep in touch with, or, you know, valuing those relationships in my life. But as I get older, you know, I want to do more and more of that. And I feel like I want to really do more and more of that. And it's so much more meaningful when I have those, you know, these deep conversations with people these days. And And yeah, that's the main point I kind of wanted to get across. And yeah, let me know in the comments if any of you guys have had like kind of like a moment during this whole COVID situation where you're just like, yeah, like I actually do value this part of my life a lot more now that it's taken away from me. Maybe you do value your social time. Maybe you do love to go to bar. Like you realize things about yourself when life throws these curveballs at you. There's the one thing about those, these curveballs and these things that life will kind of chuck at you. Each time you go through these hardships, you'll learn more and more about yourself. Every single time. And I'm not talking about just the COVID hardships. I'm talking about any kind of hardships. It could be any sort of hardships, whether it be financial hardships, whether it be hardships within the family, whether it be hardships within, a pandemic like we have going on right now. Every single hardship, you're gonna find out more and more about yourself. And that's why I think it's really good to put yourself through some hardships if you can. And some people are like, wow, that's crazy. Why would I put myself through hardships? I'm not talking about crazy hardships, but like just things that are going to challenge you a little bit and really get you excited to kind of overcome, right? And it's funny, like I actually do want to mention that there was, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I watch a lot of UFC lately, and there was a fighter. There was a particular fighter that quit after a second round. There's 3 rounds in his fight. And after the second round, he was telling his coaches, he's like, guys, call this fight. I quit. Okay, I quit. And his coaches were trying to talk him into continue going. They were like, no. Like, you have to keep going. This is not the time to quit. You got to keep it rolling. And this guy, for those of you who know the UFC or are familiar with UFC fighters, this guy took the fight on 5 days notice, and he had to cut weight, so it was very stressful. Maybe the guy was like lacking in energy. Maybe he just realized, he's like, man, I don't want to get punched in my face anymore. I'm tired of this. Whatever it might have been, he did not want to continue anymore. And he found out something about himself through that process. There was hardship there. He was put to the test. This guy was beating up on him for a couple rounds, and whatever it was, he decided, like, you know what, I don't want to do this. And I think it's important to know that about yourself. Like, let's say, like for him, for example, maybe that guy doesn't want to be a fighter. He just doesn't not want to. Like, there's just something in him that he just doesn't want to. That's not where he's at. And it's something that couldn't be ignored. In the UFC world, it was huge news. There's tons of people making videos about it. Some people say this way, some people say that way. My personal thoughts on it, I know we're curveballing here and we're heading to a different topic, but my personal thoughts on it were, I feel like he was disrespected a little bit by his coaches or his corner, whatever they want to call it. When a fighter says that he wants to quit, that means he wants to quit. There's no, like, you can't, it's just hard to talk somebody out of quitting when he's said with his own mouth he wants to quit. And then it's a weird dynamic where there's only 30 seconds between the round. So round 2, round 3, there's 30 seconds. There's literally 30 seconds. So he has to decide now, is he going out there to fight or is he going to go out to quit? And the problem with the UFC is he wanted to so badly to make his coaches call the fight off, because now then he doesn't look like this quitter, in the eyes of the public, which is very understandable. He wanted to quit, but he was like whispering almost to his coaches, like, call it. Like he almost didn't realize that there was a microphone on him and that people were able to hear him anyways, but he was trying to make his coach do it, call it. And his coach was like, no, I'm not going to call it. Get out there 3rd round, make it happen. And then what happened was the fighter was forced to say out of his own mouth to the referee. The referee asked him, can you continue? He said, no, I can't continue. And that's something his coaches should have done to kind of save his image, in that particular situation. If the fighter says, you can never know what the fighter's feeling. Like if the fighter feels like he's beat up or his energy's drained, he's just like literally might die if he goes out there for a third round, you're just gonna have to, you're basically just gonna have to, call it there. Like what else can you do? You got 30 seconds. You got 30 seconds and the entire time I've been watching UFC, I've never seen a fighter do that before. So when a fighter, not just any human, an actual fighter, a UFC fighter, tells you that he wants to quit, there's probably something really wrong there. And if you're the coach of this guy, you've got to obey those. You have to obey those orders. And yeah, we got kind of sidetracked there. But let's do a little recap of this whole thing and what I'm talking about here. It's funny, like I don't know how we got to that. I literally do not know how we got to that. But we're talking about the gratefulness and the positives of relationships. I guess that is kind of a relationship. The coach, the relationship between the coach and the fighter. That's a good example of a relationship. The coach and the fighter. And in that relationship, there was a big misunderstanding there. And the fighter is the guy that has the ability to fire the coach. So the coach has got to be careful in a situation like that. The fighter is the one that hires the coach, the one that pays the coach, right? So the coach has to he has to be careful. He's got to listen. He's got to listen to his fighter. And if somebody tells you that he wants to quit 9 times in a span of 30 seconds, and you haven't listened 9 times, that's pretty disrespectful in my opinion. And yeah, moral of the story for the entire video, for those of you who don't watch the UFC and like, where did this guy sidetrack to? The moral of the story is try to be more aware and put more focus into the relationships in your life. And realize how valuable they are. Because without the relationships in your life, you basically have nothing. In Ray Dalio's book, there's a book he has, it's called Principles. Is it called Principles? I forgot the exact name. Life Principles? Something like that. Principles, Life Principles. I read it like a couple of years back. I don't remember the exact title of it. But anyways, Ray Dalio, he's a billionaire, right? He talks about the importance of this, in his book. He says that, a lot of us were chasing money, including himself. In the book, he was talking about chasing money and all this. He said, but then later on in life, as you get older, you always realize that the relationships in your life are really what makes life really worth living. Like that happiness, that joy, it really comes from having great relationships in your life. And when I say great relationships, I also mean a great relationship with yourself too, which is the most important relationship that you can have actually, okay? The relationship with yourself trumps everything. You need to have a wonderful relationship with yourself first, and then you can start to build all these foundations and have, great friendships and a significant other, whatever else it may be. So those are all important. So I guess I'll leave you guys right there. And I don't know, it's just been a beautiful day today. It's been raining outside all day. I bet you guys can tell from the lighting of this video, it's kind of gloomy out there, it's gray. I personally love the rain. It's my favorite type of weather. Call me crazy. I don't know, I just love it. So I'm extra happy today, so I might shoot actually a few more videos. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, drop a like, subscribe if you're not subscribed, drop a comment, whether it be about something that you figured out about yourself during this COVID situation, lockdown, whatever it may be, or something about this UFC fighter that you have some thoughts on as well. Like I'd love to kind of discuss back and forth on that as well. And yeah, we'll stop it right here. I'll see you guys in the next video.